Thanks for joining me, Mike. So we're very lucky at Jim's Mowing. So we do a couple of podcast episodes where we interview franchisors or a couple of franchisees and just find out more about them. But I didn't expect you to be at training. So for anyone who's watching this right now, hopefully they recognise you. But if not, Mike Andes. So you're the founder of Augusta Lawn Care, an 8-figure lawn maintenance franchise. Also have a massive online presence on YouTube and all the other social media channels. You've also got your own podcast, various courses online, multiple books, Creative the Landscape Summit, your own software, your own website business. What have I missed?
Yeah, there's just a lot of different tools and resources, mostly for lawn care, but just really all home improvement businesses. Something I'm pretty passionate about is just helping a lot of them. And Jim had talked about the other day how he believes that 90 to 95% of them fail in the first 5 years. And a lot of that has to do with, yes, there is lower cost to entry and not as much investment. You don't need deep pockets to get started in home improvement, but it's definitely an area where people go into without a whole lot of knowledge or education. So hopefully trying to provide that. So whether it be like, lawncarebookkeeper.com, lawncaremedia.com, like we have lawn care everything, just trying to give them tools to help grow their business.
Yeah, because I looked, obviously did a little bit of research before you came here. And because I think it was a while back I reached out to you and said, do you want to have Jim on your podcast? And Jim came on your podcast, and then a year later, here you are. I was very surprised to see you in the audience and asked Jim, because you just, from looking at what you do online, you're so busy. I'm thinking, well, how do you manage to take the time off to come down here to actually look at what we're doing? So what made you the decision for you to come down here, and why were you interested in what Jim's Mowing does?
Yeah, obviously my biggest focus and most of my time goes towards is building Augusta Lawn Care, the franchise side. So now we have almost 100 locations. And in the U.S., like Jim had said the other day, larger territory sizes, people are growing their franchise a lot larger with a lot of employees and things. So there's just a lot more moving parts. But just trying to learn. There's no book, there's no online course on how to grow a successful franchise, let alone a lawn care franchise. And obviously, Jim's Mowing has now 2,000 locations, and across the whole system, 4,000 plus. So they've figured something out. And so just coming here, learning how the training is done has been really helpful. And seeing where we can improve, and then also just seeing the overall culture of what Jim's built.
Now, how did you first off get into the lawn care industry?
Yeah, so I started mowing lawns when I was 11 years old. My brother was 13 at the time, and we just went around our neighborhood mowing grass. And he eventually got his driver's permit, so we would be able to drive a little bit further out and do more lawns. But that's how I paid my way through college. I started college when I was really young. I started when I was 13 years old. And so I thought I was going to become a doctor. And so I was like, hey, if I'm going to become a doctor, I got to get through school fast. So I skipped a couple grades, did a couple years in one, started college when I was 13 years old, and was fully intending to become either a heart surgeon or some sort of doctor in a very specialized brain and heart is what I was really passionate about. And so I finished my pre-med degree, my 4-year, and then went to Africa for 6 weeks and did a whole bunch of stuff there that you could never do without a full doctorate degree in the U.S. And that was everything from birthing to surgery. We did everything, right? And it was an amazing experience. I loved every moment of it. I came back to the U.S. though and started doing a bunch of shadowing, different specialties, and just realized I didn't want to do the same 4 or 5 procedures for the next 40 years of my career. And if you're going to go into massive debt in medical school, you better make sure you stay with that the rest of your career. It's not like one day I can do foot surgery, and the next day it's I'm going to work on someone's back. You can't do that. That's the beautiful thing about entrepreneurship, is that you have that flexibility to do multiple things or scratch different itches. And so that's when I decided. I was 18 years old. I decided to drop out of my medical school applications and go ahead and grow Augusta Lawn Care. So that's, up until that time, it was Andy's Lawn Care, my brother and I said, hey, I'll buy out. I'll do Augusta Lawn Care, and then since then scaled it up, and 3 years ago started franchising.
Now, there's a lot to unpack there. I can't skip past. You went to college at 13.
Yeah.
So was it something your parents were really massive in education, or where'd that drive come from to be such a high achiever at a really, really early age? Because at 13, I'll tell you what, I don't know what I was doing, but I was in a lot of trouble. I was getting suspended from school, and here you are in college. It's amazing. But it's amazing. So I'm just trying to get at where's that come from? Is it something you're obviously naturally gifted, but is it something that your parents drive you, or where'd that come from?
Yeah, they definitely didn't push me at all. They were consistently saying hey, we're not forcing you to do this. You don't have to do this. You can take a couple of years off. You can do other stuff. They had never gone to college. My grandparents had never really gone to college. I guess I kind of saw, going to college and getting a really good job, especially like a doctor, as kind of my way out of what our family had gone through. We had been up and down. My dad was a minister, so we never really had money. We were always kind of up and down, renting houses. We moved a lot. So I was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to do something different. I'm going to break out of this. I'm going to make some money, and I'm going to become wealthy and be able to give back. And so I looked at college as kind of that was the way out, right? And little did I know I had a lot of entrepreneurial tendencies, and I just didn't know how to manifest those because they weren't entrepreneurs. No one around me was entrepreneurs or business owners. So I was the classic kid coming through school selling candy. I did the waxing on skis and snowboards for people. I sold food out next to golf courses. Like I did all those little things as a kid, and I just never really like if my parents would have been entrepreneurial, they would have been like, oh, he's gonna become a business owner. But like there was no one around me like that, so I didn't really develop that until probably a little bit later on, once I realized that, hey, medicine wasn't going to be for me. And that was a big, setback, not really for my parents, but mostly for like my professors and peers that had for so long thought I was going to become a doctor. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm out. Like I'm not, because I was planning like within 2 months to move and go to medical school. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go and mow lawns. And so that was, I think it's very similar to Jim's story in terms of him being very educated and then deciding to mow grass. But being so young with people's expectations so high for you, that was at first tough because it was like, seriously, you're gonna go mow grass and you've been like this young kid throughout your whole school. And, I got a lot of emails from professors and things like that. But I think, there's definitely a stigma around the trades, around starting a small business in something as simple as lawn care. But it's what you make of it. And I think, I think that if I would have became a doctor, I would have had less impact on the world compared to what I have had so far. And I think the future will prove that even more so. And yeah.
I love what you said there because we are looking at using a pretty well-known influencer in Australia to do a campaign around that, so sort of tell kids you don't have to, because in Australia it's very similar. You're told you have to go to university or you have to drop out early to do a trade like a plumbing or like there's nowhere in between. There's no one teaching you, or maybe you could actually start your own business, right? There's none of that sort of approach. So it's very courageous at the age of 18 to actually have that self-realization and make that, because a lot of people don't get that until they're like 45, and you can see 100 people in training right now who probably realize that in their late 30s or their 40s.
And it wasn't like a grand plan. I wasn't like super like, okay, so I'm making this decision. It was like, okay, I know I can't do medicine for the rest of my career, and I've been gunning for this my entire, the past 4 years in college, and now that I don't want to do that, and that was weird. And hard to come to grips with that, but like the only other thing I could do was mowing grass because I'd been doing it through college to pay my way through. So it was kind of by default, and then once I got into it, realizing that, hey, I can grow this, and like there's more opportunity beyond just myself mowing grass. Like I can hire people and have multiple locations and start the media side of things.
Because you've scaled it in 8 years very, very, very quickly. So what was that, let's say that first year like? Did you have was it something where you started obviously as a sole trader, as a one-man band we'd call in Australia, and you've obviously built that really quickly. So maybe you want to talk about scaling that business early on.
Yeah, if you're trying to grow, you really only have two different resources, either time or money, right? So when I first got started, I didn't have the money side. So the time was knock on doors, talk to people, like, literally door knocking and door hangers and all the rest of that. You either have time to go do that very much hand-to-hand combat, or you have money to go spend on Facebook ads or Google ads or whatever it might be. So the first couple of years I didn't have money, so I did most of the very much intensive things like emailing property managers and real estate agents and insurance agents and just trying to get as much work as possible. And then as time went on, you take the money that was being earned and just kept investing it back into the business. And most people can't invest to the extent that I did potentially because I didn't have a family at the time. I didn't have dependents. I lived at home with my parents. I was, 18, 19-year-old kid. So I was able to put like every dollar back in. And so because of that, that's why we scaled so quickly. Like the first year, I think I did 200, second year, 490. Third year was 9 something, so it got to $1 million literally within like the first 3 or 4 years. But that was because like every dollar was being pumped back into the business, and I made a lot of mistakes in doing that in terms of adding services, going too far away from my central point, and so later on I had to correct those. And so with the franchise, as it is with gyms, you're trying to prevent those mistakes from happening for other people. Like you can build $1 million business, but you don't have to do it the way I did it, where I made all these mistakes getting there and then had to like reconstruct the business because of those mistakes. And so, but yeah, those first few years were quite a ride.
And what did your parents sort of say when they saw this success early on? Were they going, oh, yeah, pretty good decision you made, or well, their thoughts around the whole thing?
They get kudos. They're great parents because they didn't put pressure on me any direction. They really didn't. And some people would like question like, oh no, were they disappointed? Like I think the only thing they were like, hey, like, are you sure you're so young? Shouldn't you still do something in college. Like, you're still so young, you don't have any expenses, you're not married, you don't have anything, right? So what I did to kind of appease them, but also it made a lot of sense, is I did get my master's in business at night while I was growing those first couple years. So while I was 18, 19, it was a 2-year program. In the evenings, I would go to the college from 6 to 10 p.m. And that was when I got my master's in business while growing Augusta Lawn Care.
Where'd you get the energy for that? Where do you have the time for that?
Yeah, it was just, you know, like, if you want something bad enough, you're willing to sacrifice. I say sacrifice or regret, you choose. And so you're either going to sacrifice for what you want, or you're not going to, and down the road you're going to regret not making those sacrifices. And so, the first couple years, like, in college, was nuts. Like, I'd usually wake up at 6, mow all day long. I'd do a personal training job from 3 to 6 p.m. Then from 6 p.m. till 10 p.m. I'd do college, and then I'd do usually from 10 to 1 at the college. I would do projects with my classmates, and then I'd repeat that for 2 years, right? And so that was hard. But when you have something you really want to push for, and I think that the first probably 6 to 12 months, I was definitely driven by, like, I'm going to prove people wrong that told me I shouldn't go into lawn care. I was definitely driven by that. After a while, that doesn't really last very long. The chip on your shoulder can only last so long before it's like, okay, where's the internal motivation instead of external? It was hard. But if you want to do something that's out of the ordinary or outside of the average, you're going to be lonely, and you're going to be doing things that are out of the ordinary. And so, it's not healthy to only sleep a couple hours a night for a couple years. But, if people are wanting to do something extraordinary, you're going to have to do something extraordinary in your daily life and, sacrifice for things.
Let's talk about building that business in the early days in regards to hiring staff and managing people, because obviously a lot of our franchisees are more sole traders, and we really want them to put on staff, and there's always a lot of issues, as you would know, with that. So maybe you want to talk about your advice, or how you manage staff and find good people and keep them in your business.
Yeah, I think that first and foremost, I don't think everyone should hire and grow their company, right? I think I kind of talk about 3 different levels of stress in a business. And from 0 in revenue to about 200,000 in revenue, it's mostly physical stress. And that's mostly someone that is a solo operator out in the field doing the work, and you're just like drained, right? You work 8-10 hours out in the hot, in the heat, around machines all day long. You're just drained. It's physical stress. Now, as you grow the company, if you're going to hire people, that's going to move outside of physical stress and move more into financial stress, because now you got to pay somebody. Now you have overhead. Now you have multiple trucks. Now you need storage space for those trucks. There's all these other components of finances that is as you grow the business. Now your insurance is more because you have employees. Now you got to deal with all these government organizations when it comes to labor and all the rest of it. So financially, there's a lot of stress. Usually, I'd say between 200,000 and 500,000 annual revenue. And then everyone's like, well, I just got to keep hiring, and eventually I want to work on my business, not in it. And so they hire more people, and they keep growing. And I say kind of after 500, 800,000 and beyond, you start really, most of the stress you have as a business owner is not physical. Financially, usually you've figured things out. It's the psychological stress, because now you have all these people depending on you. Now you have all these employees. Every single day, without fail, there's an employee issue. Someone doesn't show up. Someone has relationship issues. Literally, I woke up this morning to an email. One of their employees committed suicide. Like, it's a horrible thing, and that's psychological stress that just keeps mounting up on you. So what you got to determine is, like, first and foremost, should I grow my business to where I need employees? Because some people would be like, give me all the physical stress in the world, and I'm beat every single day, but I just can't handle the emotional stress of dealing with people who don't show up, and I have to babysit them, or they make mistakes, and I have to do callbacks to clients. Like, then don't do it, right? So I think it's a matter of just knowing yourself, knowing what you want from the business, and then, okay, what's the goal? Do I need to have employees to get there? If I do, I'm gonna have to prepare myself for different levels of stress. And it's not easier working on your business compared to in your business. It's just physical stress versus psychological stress. And so it's determining what you want from life and your business, and then working backwards to, do I need employees? How many do I need to achieve that type of revenue? If you want to build $1 million business, you're not going to do it by yourself, right? You're probably going to have to hire people. And so you're going to have to prepare for that shift in the type of stress you're going to have. That's
a brilliant way to look at it. It's a brilliant piece of advice, and it's really applicable to our franchisees, and obviously with our Build Our Business talk we have on Saturday. In regards to your franchise compared to Jim's Mowing, so you're here for the Jim's Group training, you've just done the 3 days, you're doing a bit of the Jim's Mowing training now. How does our franchise differ to yours?
In terms of training of the franchise as a whole?
Let's talk about just as the whole, and then we'll talk maybe a little bit about the training as well.
I think as a whole, it's the reason why someone would join a Jim's is very different than someone why they would be joining for Augusta. And so a lot of my interaction with the Jim's Mowing franchisees I want to know, hey, why did you join? What attracted you? And it's very different compared to Augusta. At Augusta, it's like they want to build $1 million business. They want to become millionaires. They want to have a lot of employees, right? It's very different than what most of them is in Jim's Mowing. I've found are coming from, entry-level positions or just labor positions, and they don't have any business or management experience, and they're more or less just trying to work for themselves. And it's much more about the work-life balance and control their schedule. And it's not to say that's worse or negative, or it's just different, right? And so a lot of the franchisees, I have a daily mastermind video I do with them, and they ask, like, hey, what's the differences? And I'm like, it's not right or wrong, or one's better or worse, it's just different. If someone came to me and said, hey, I don't want to grow a big business, I just want to work for myself and have a schedule that I can have more flexibility in, I'd be like, Jim's is better for you. You should not join Augusta. I tell people, if you just want to build a $200,000 per year business, don't join Augusta. You don't need it. There's lots of work out there. You're gonna, listen to my videos and learn stuff, and you can build the business that way. You'd only join Augusta if you're wanting to do multiple locations and have like a lot of employees down the road.
So how do you help them build that $1 million business? And you spoke to me on Monday about it, and you have these different 1 year, 2 year, 3 year sort of milestones and stuff. So how are you helping your franchisees scale to that $1 million business?
Yeah, I think part of it is the first 3 years are extremely difficult if you're trying to scale that quickly. Especially if you're trying to get even past 500, 600, 700,000 in 3 years. You're changing the business so fast that literally you're going from physical stress to financial stress to psychological stress so quickly in a couple years that's very jarring for the business owner. It's also very jarring for the business, because you're putting all these different pressures on it. It's changing so rapidly. More customers, more employees, more trucks, more equipment, changing where the storage and the shop space. So the first 3 years is just brutal. If someone can get through the first 3 years and grow that quickly, I usually tell hey, take a year, raise your prices, make more money, and get a little bit more comfortable before you keep growing. Because the first years are just, it's like Elon Musk always says, entrepreneurship is like chewing on glass and staring into the abyss, right? Like, we don't talk about that. We talk about we're gonna work for ourselves and make more money, but it's really, really hard. And so the main thing we focus on is during those phases of growth, here's what you can expect. Here's what you should be doing. Here's what you're going to be thinking. So the very first thing we do at training is we go through the different stages of growth. 0 to 100,000 in revenue, 100,000 to 200,000 in revenue, 200,000 to 500,000, 500 to 800,000, and then 800 plus. And we talk about these 5 different stages because, in my opinion, every single one of these stages, the business looks completely different. And what I tell them at every stage is, here's what you're going to be thinking. Here's all the negative thoughts you're going to be thinking. Here's what you're going to be going through, like the pain, whether it be financially or mentally or physically or whatever. So it's really about expectations. Here's the expectations. Here's how it's going to be. So when you go through it, hopefully you're a little bit more at ease because okay, he said I was going to go through this. He said if I was between 200,000 and 500,000 in annual revenue, that'd probably be the hardest point in terms of profitability because of X, Y, and Z. And so it's about setting those expectations so that someone stays in the game. The only reason people don't grow big businesses, and they usually will retreat back to being solo, is they quit. And the ultimate failure in business is quitting. Not having a bad year, not having to contract a little bit, but the ultimate reason that people fail in business is because they quit. And so if you can just keep someone from quitting during that crazy psychological roller coaster of growth, then they'll usually win. And so that's that first 3 years that is so difficult if you're growing that quickly. So
is that the key to you then? For someone, let's say your top performing franchisees, is that let's say they're just maybe more resilient, or they're just willing to put through a lot more, let's say, crap than other people who just might give up early? So just that resilience factor?
Yeah, there's two things that in terms of scaling, I really believe 0 to 500,000 in annual revenue is mostly dictated by how well someone can sell. Right? So can you sell? Are you good at talking to a customer, upselling? We've seen franchisees go from 0 to 100,000 in monthly revenue literally within a matter of 2 to 3 months after training. And they're always good salespeople. But the differentiating factor, and even that person I'm thinking of right now, the transfer after 500 plus in annual revenue is, can they lead? There's a difference between someone who can sell and someone who can lead. And sometimes people fail to make that transition, and they'll have to actually stay around 500,000-600,000 in annual revenue simply because they aren't as good at leading as they are at selling. And so we consistently see people that are either one of those things. I've seen people that can't sell for anything, but would make a great leader. And when usually what happens, it takes them 5 years to build a business that's $500,000 in annual revenue. They're trying to grow, but they're so not good at selling. Their close ratio is 20, 30, 40%, and therefore their growth to 500 is really slow. But beyond that, they do really good because they're great at leading, hiring, motivating their team. And so those are two very different skill sets. And so either A, someone knows that and is able to merge into that second stage of growth, which is leadership, or they hire somebody else. They hire a general manager that is good with the people, good with the team, able to hire people. And that's just a very much of a one-by-one situation.
Let's talk about what your training consists of. So obviously you've seen a little bit about ours, and it's a 6-day course. So how long is your training? What's involved? Let's say someone goes, I want to buy an Augusta Lawn Care franchise. What's your selection process, first of all? And actually what's involved for your training?
Yeah, like our selection process is definitely making sure their goals are aligned with what Augusta offers, right? Again, if they're just wanting to do 100 to 200,000 annual revenue, we will literally tell them, just don't use us. Here's the free content, do this and this, maybe set up a call with us one time, we'll do it for free, and like we'll help you as much as we possibly can. We give all these resources you can buy a la carte in terms of like lawncarewebdesign.com, like all these things are built for them. You don't need Augusta at that point. So the selection process is number one, expectations. Number two, do they align with what Augusta Nation stands for in terms of honesty, and we want to change the level of professionalism of the landscaping industry. And so if that's not something that they're passionate about, if they're just in it for the money, there's probably better opportunities, someone else they should probably do it with that's a little bit less heartache, like go start a McDonald's franchise, go start Taco, like you'll make a lot of money doing that. And so, if they really crave and want to have that impact on the industry and their employees and giving people the opportunity to become business owners inside their company, then they're a good fit. And typically they're people who have followed the content for a long time and they understand where I'm coming from and what the goals of Augusta are. So that's the selection process. In terms of training, we used to be 3 days. We've moved it to 4 days now, and part of that is to fill in the gap that Jim does so well, and that is the technical training. Everything like today, we're going over safety and how to start a mower and how to maintain the mower and how to put the stuff on the trailer. Like we didn't do a lot of that in the past, so we're adding an extra day to do that because we really don't focus much on that. Like prior, like 6 months ago, we literally didn't talk about mowers. We didn't talk about anything like that because it was really about here's from the business standpoint, here's the next 5 years, here's how to hire, here's how to do marketing. And so it's much different because like they're allowed to do Facebook and Google ads. They do their own marketing. We give them the resources, but then they have their own budget. So that allows them to scale as much as they want. It's not really dependent on the franchisor spending the ad spend. And we don't have like an ad fund, right? So it's just a different dynamic. They have to do their own marketing. We give them the tools and the tutorials, but it's like, how big do you want to make it is up to them. And so that's the difference. Is we focus much more on the business, the numbers, the scaling up, the marketing side. And here it's much more about the technical side, especially because there's a lot that have never been in the industry. And so they do need to learn those things. So I've learned that I need to take some of that and implement it in ours though, just to help the people who are brand new.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. I was going to say as well, for those who don't know, you've got a massive digital empire. I'll call it an empire. You've got a massive YouTube channel, you've got TikTok, you've got Instagram, all this sort of stuff. You've got a really, really big following. You've got courses, all these sorts of things. And when did that start coming into your business, or when did you start putting that into it?
Yeah, so August 4th, 2016. This is the day my very first book got published. It's called Millennial Millionaire. It's not a great read. I get embarrassed just even with the title. But anyways, Millennial Millionaire, that book became published. That same day, I was underneath a dump truck, and the PTO, the power takeoff, had broke in the cab where you pull it, and that basically would allow the dump truck to dump. Now this is a massive dump truck. We're not talking like a pickup truck. This is a Ford 700, so it's massive. So I was like, hey, the cable broke. So I went underneath the truck to turn on the PTO and manually just like pull the lever. And so I had to kind of go underneath the gearbox to pull this PTO. When I did that, my hoodie, as I turned it on and engaged it, got caught in the PTO as it got turned on. So that's the thing that underneath the dump truck just spins super fast. So at that point, basically all my shirt, my hoodie got bunched around my neck. I thought I was gonna die. It happened really quick, but it seemed slow. It seemed about 5 seconds to me. It probably happened in half a second. But I remember thinking like, this is where I'm gonna die. And I remember like it pulling me up because it was trying to, get me in this spin. And it bunched all around my neck. And I remember like looking out from underneath the dump truck and just like, oh, like this is how it's gonna end. And I wasn't like nervous or anything. It was like, okay, this is how it's over. And so fortunately, I it got really tight around my neck and then just split open. And there was no zipper, there was no seam, but it just my hoodie and my t-shirt just split open. I still have scars, like that's what that is still. Jeez. A little bit. It kind of comes up around here. Wow. But that moment was defining for me because I had to stay 2 to 3 weeks out of the business. And seeing what we had built and allowing the systems to operate, the business still ran, it still did well, but seeing where there was also issues. And then what I started to do is take the systems that had been built in the business and the ones that I saw that needed help and built landscapebusinesscourse.com. So that was really the start of it. And it's a course where you kind of basically start at zero, and I walked through the stages of my first 3 years of growing to $1 million and the mistakes that I made. And it was just like very much like, here's what I did, here's what worked, and here's what didn't. That's what it was. Landscapebusinesscourse.com. That's when I started the podcast, and then kind of just grew from there.
Because it's huge. So I had a look at the course before, and there's a lot of content. Like there's a heap. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not one of those courses where people just suck you in with the $9.90, price tag, and then it's a disappointing course. Your course is just huge, and there's a lot of value in it. But you've also got the marketing part of the business, and you've got the web part of the business. What else do you have as offshoots of your brand?
Yeah, so the goal is like, regardless of whether or not someone in lawn care and landscape industry wants to join Augusta, that they know who I am and that they can get help from what we're doing. Because our goal, like the ultimate, everything that it points to is changing the level of professionalism in the industry. So if I'm going to do that, it doesn't mean I have to only have Augusta. That has to grow, and we have to have a lot of locations in order to impose our will on competitors who don't do what we do. But in terms of just helping someone that doesn't want to join Augusta, lawncaremedia.com allows them to do all their print marketing, like door hangers, flyers, postcards, all that good stuff. Lawn care web design, that again, building their website, doing their SEO. Then we have lawncarebookkeeper.com to help do their books and their cookbooks and all the rest of it. And there's probably 10 others I'm forgetting. There's a whole bunch of them, and we're trying to build something now that actually help them sell and buy lawn care businesses as well. So all of that is just tools, I think, and ultimately my goal is for everyone in the lawn care industry to know who I am, what we're doing, and even if they don't join Augusta, to have to abide by the rules of the game we're playing. And in the rules of the game that I see that I want in the lawn care and landscaping industry is open book management, where the employees know all the numbers in the business, pay for performance, where they get paid based upon their production, not an hourly rate, and the culture of actually caring for one another is something that we really believe in, and having a very transparent organization. And if you're not going to do those things, you're not going to be able to hire employees, because they're going to go to companies who are. And so my goal is just to elevate the whole industry by imposing those things on other competitors.
Does it really just come back, let's say, to your motto or to what your tagline is? You want to lift the standard for that, and you're creating all these online assets to really just live your ethos. It's like Jim's ethos, right? His priorities, his franchisees, and everything's geared towards that, right? Mm-hmm. Everything falls underneath that with Jim's Jobs and Technology. So is that where it basically comes from? That's your ethos, that's your motto, and then everything you do, all this digital content, all that sort of stuff, is all aimed to just lift that whole industry up all around.
Yeah, exactly. And some people are alarmed by the fact that that basically we have Augusta Lawn Care, but then I also have all these other tools, whether it be free content and training, whether it be courses, whether it be books, whether it be p4psoftware.com. Like, we give all those things away. Those are the tools, though. And what people get confused by is that the tools alone don't make someone successful. And what's really interesting, if you look at a company like Tesla, they actually have all their patents are open patents, which means everyone can see them and basically rip them off. And what that proves is that the intellectual property of a product or a system in a business is not what actually makes the business successful. What makes a company successful, what makes a product successful, is taking those tools and then actually implementation. And so how I look at it is like, hey, you can either A, buy the tools, whether it be for free or for a cost like the courses and all the rest of it, or B, you can get the product, the tools, and the implementation of it, exactly how to take these tools and use them using Augusta. And that's just up to every person. Not everyone is cut out for a franchise, and they'd rather do independent. And so I just want to have the tools, whether it be if they are with us or not, to be able to improve the...
Yeah, I love that transparency. That's something we try and take here with our content model. It's the same thing. We do a lot of video content just saying what are our fees and put a lot of stuff out there, right? We don't want to hide anything. And we're the same. We want to make franchising in Australia more transparent, and we take the same sort of approach. But I was going to say, has anyone actually not bought the franchise but watched all your content and then basically come back to you and said, oh, I've built this $1 million business or something from your course or from your content, or have you had anyone reach out with that?
Absolutely, like every day, right? And so I'm thrilled about that. And so some people, again, they would think like, oh, that's taking away from your franchise in Augusta, and I still don't believe that, because the secret sauce of what makes Augusta different is that then you can take that $1 million business and then copy and paste it 10 more times, because we have a command center, because we have the systems in place to support that infrastructure. You can't do that as an independent. And so, but yeah, it happens a lot, and that's very fulfilling. I think the most fulfilling thing for me personally, though, as we kind of going towards that ultimate goal, is what we call the 3F program, so franchise fee forgiveness program. Basically, if someone works for Augusta, whether it be in the field or in the office or whatever, at Augusta Lawn Care for 2 years, they're able to start a franchise for free. There's no initial fee. And so that saves them, $20,000. But more importantly, it takes someone who literally started at probably minimum wage or $15 or $20 an hour, and now they're becoming a business owner, and they're going to get all the training necessary to start their own company. And we have multiple people doing that now, in the process of, have already done it and been successful. And that's really rewarding to me personally. That's
an amazing concept. And I think because we've got franchisors here, so it'd be up to them to do that. But that's amazing that you, as a company, do that, because we have a similar thing. We have a lot of employees of franchisees who might buy a franchise after 7 years or after 6 years, and it's the same sort of thing, but they have to pay for it. Mm-hmm. Whereas you're giving that for free, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. In regards to, you mentioned, I want to talk more or get more for our franchisees in regards to the P4P, your pay for performance software that you've obviously developed. And do you want to talk about that and what it does?
Yeah, so basically P4P in a nutshell is, I'm going to give a percentage of labor revenue to the employee every single day, and that's it. And so we give 33% of all the labor revenue that they earn in a day goes in their pocket. So if you earn $600 today, you're going to get $200 of it. And that doesn't matter if it takes you 5 hours or 10 hours. You're still getting $200. It's up to you to figure out how to be more efficient, how to get in and out of the truck faster, how to pack a lunch and not have to stop at 5 gas stations, take 48 smoke breaks. That's up to you. And so what that allows me as an owner to do is not have to micromanage you. I don't have to be like tracking your truck, or like, hey, where are you at? Or they're on their phone. Like, are they always on their phone when I'm not around? Like that's bad for the owner. Like, psychologically, it's bad for the employee. No great employee wants a micromanaging boss looking over their shoulder. They don't want them rolling up on the job just to see if they're working. Like, it's super unmotivating. So the goal is, instead of the employer trying to get everyone done faster and faster and faster, and the employee, if they're getting paid by the hour, the longer the job takes, the more money they make, because they're being paid by the hour. So you're going two different opposite directions. With P4P, it's like, hey, I as an owner want you to get this job done faster, and I as an employee also want to get done faster. We're going the same direction now. And it's like, how do we get this job done more efficiently, more profitably, and we make sure the customer's happy, so we avoid what we call yellow slips or callbacks, where now you actually start to not get the money. There's deductions if you're not doing a good quality job.
I think it's a brilliant concept. I've heard of some franchisees maybe giving a bonus or something, but I don't think it's measured or it's tracked in that way. So is that software is it just literally American users, or is it other countries, or who?
No, we've made it worldwide. Yeah. Anyone can use it. We actually have a couple of gyms franchises.
We do? Well, there we go. I learned something new every day. Yeah. All right, that'd be great.
There's quite a few.
I need to know their names. Yeah, it'd be great. That's great.
Yeah, so the main thing is, if someone's doing that, it's a matter of you're doing it for the right reasons, right? And you got to be clear and transparent with your team. You can't share parts of the numbers. If you're going to share budgeted hours, for example, you've got to be clear with what your hourly rate is. The employees have to have the information. I've always said, like, people always have struggled with hiring, and it's always been difficult, always has been, always will be in the trades to find employees. But everyone as owners always says, oh man, if I could do these jobs way faster, and I could do this so much more efficiently, and I don't get customers complaining, and these employees just mess stuff up, and they don't go fast enough, and it takes them twice as long as I would do it. And why can't, ultimately what they're saying is, why can't they just operate like an owner would? That's what they're and yes, they physically potentially could. They could be faster, all those things. The reason they don't is because of two things. Number one, an employee is not compensated like an owner. And secondarily, they don't have the information like an owner does. So P4P is one component, and that is you're compensating them like an owner, i.e. the more efficiently and higher quality your job is, the more money you will make on P4P. Second part is information. That's where open book management comes into play, where you start sharing the numbers. Because if they know that now they have the information, they actually can look at a job, have a work change order, and tell you as the manager what the price should be for the work change order, instead of you having to go to the property and meet with the customer, because they have all the information. So in my opinion, if you want an employee to think like an owner, operate like an owner, be efficient as an owner, they need to be paid like an owner, and they need to have the information like an owner. And if either of those two things fall apart, in my opinion, that's when the system starts to break.
I think it's brilliant. I'm really happy to hear that franchisees actually use it. So if there are other franchisees watching this who use it, please let me know, because I want to communicate.
A couple in New Zealand and a couple
Is
in
it?
Australia.
Oh, fantastic. Now let's talk about your command center. So Jim showed you around here a little bit the other day. We went through our call center. So do you want to talk about what your command center does and is and how that operates in comparison to us?
That's the biggest difference, I would say, with the two biggest takeaways from me this week that we are very different in is, number one, you will have head office, divisional franchisors, and then franchisees. We have head office and franchisees. That's it, right? So there's direct, between head office and the franchisee, which makes it a lot more operationally heavy for us, because we have to give direct support directly to them. Whereas what Jim's done, which is brilliant, is you have 237 franchisors that help support all the franchisees. So there's not if we had 4,000 franchisees, I would need at least 50 to 60 business development, business coaches on site, on staff here, just helping with daily operations for the franchisees, right? So having that breakdown with the franchisors, that's the number one difference. The second is the command center and the call center. You all do it based upon the lead, and whereas with us, we do it based upon the minute, right? And it seems like it's a small difference, but it's massive. It's really, the whole structure of it changes when how it's done. And they always talk about the lead fee, the lead fee, the lead. We never talk about lead fee. It's if you don't want someone calling, don't mark it. So it's just different, right? Very different. And it takes a lot more operationally for us to train people, because we answer the phones and it's not just hey, let me take your information and the franchisee will call you. We are setting up the scheduled appointment. We are looking at the calendar for that franchisee and for that specific estimator and seeing if they have time on their schedule. We are educating the customer about that specific service and which services we do or do not offer. Invoicing questions, billing questions. We're taking their credit card payments. We're doing all that on the command center side, which is great for the franchisee, but very difficult for us to train and get people to that level of training. And so I would die to go back a few years and start with this model, because Jim has expressed hey, down the road they want to be able to book the jobs and book the estimates for the franchisees. We did that from day one, and it is a pain in the butt. And I wish we would have just started with more of a lead structure and then moved into more what we call full service, where we offer we do all the payroll for all our franchisees. They can do it by the minute. We pay all their employees and all the rest of it. So it's just a lot of. It's great for them. It allows them to scale very quickly because they can focus on the two things that drive the business forward, and that is marketing and hiring. And so we take basically everything else off their plate, which is great for growth, but it's been very difficult for us. And I've always been pretty clear that's our Achilles heel, because we've had to try to scale so quickly with something that is so operationally dense.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that. Yeah, so you've sort of built the model to allow your franchisees to scale. But even though you've got a massive business, you've got 100 franchisees, which is huge. But in terms of your operations itself, as you said, the scaling problem for yourself is that sort of how you just help them so much, almost in a way directly, that's limiting your growth almost.
100%. We can only add, this winter we're only going to add for 50 franchisees, not because we can't sell more than that in terms of locations. There's plenty of work to be had. It's more a matter of if I get 50 more franchisees and my current 100 are going to grow 40 to 50% in annual growth, in annual revenue next year, that means I need to double my staff at Command Center, which means I got to go from 40 people to 80 people. That's not easy. I think if I would redo it all again, I would offer about 1/3 of the services that we do to them, and then I would slowly build that in over time. But it definitely inhibits our growth, for sure.
Now let's talk about equipment. So there's obviously equipment differences between America and Australia. Let's talk about what sort of gear do your guys use? Is it something when they buy a franchise, you give them a recommended gear or startup pack, or how does it work for you guys?
We don't. We have just so many different brands over there. Here, we kind of stick to 3 or 4, really consistently. We have so many over there, different types of grass. There's such different climates from one side of the U.S. to the other. It's similar in Western versus here in Melbourne, but just so many different climates. You got snow involved as well over there. So we don't really give a whole lot of advice at all about equipment. That's something I'm adding in to our 4th day of training now. But we don't do a whole lot because there's such a variety. You will also emphasize a lot more on the electric side of things than we do. And it's just a matter of, I feel like a big part of it is having employees, right? If I was by myself, I would 100% use electric equipment because it's easier on my body, etc. However, leaving one battery at a house is like $200, let's say, is a lot of fuel you can buy with that. So it's hard to justify it when you have employees, especially if it's twice as expensive. Like, well, now if they break a piece of equipment, it's twice. Well, now the fuel doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, where can I get my parts? Like this whole thing with the supply chain shortage was horrible for everyone. But I can go buy another mower tomorrow that's gas powered and throw it in the mix. If something breaks in my electric mower, I'm now going to go buy another one and it's twice as expensive. So it's just different. I don't think there's a matter of right versus wrong. Again, it's like if you're a solo operator, probably going more electric, probably going more premium. Whereas if you're going 10, 15, 20 employees, you're probably looking at how can I scale this quickly, and if something breaks, not create this massive issue. Where I don't mind having 3 push mowers on a truck. Whereas if they're $5,000 a piece, like that one electric one over there, I'd be like, I don't think I'm going to do 3 on the same mower on the same setup, right? So it's just different, right?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. We did a video with a franchisee who's around 8 employees, and he did the same thing with the gear. It's all easy to get parts, very interchangeable. It's not the best gear in the world, but it's really efficient, and it's something, if something breaks, he can just, he's got parts ready to go. But I was going to say as well, what is the difference between your services that you're offering customers over there and maybe some of ours? So you sat through the horticulture stuff yesterday, and you had Des, and he's an absolute expert at what he does. But in regards to the services that you guys offer compared to here, what are some differences, or is there something different you offer over there in the States?
Yeah, first thing was like the spraying that they do over here would require everyone to get certified in the US. And I talked to Des yesterday, and he said, hey, eventually that's probably going to happen in Australia too, where these things are required to have a certification or something by the government saying you can do that. We get fined massively if people start spraying Roundup and they're not certified. Here, they are like, we're just going to spray Roundup. And I'm like, okay, like, here we go. And they give great training here in terms of gyms in terms of safety and things and what mixtures and all the rest of it. But the average person can just go spray Roundup. Like in the U.S., that doesn't happen. So that's a big change. And then in terms of services, some of our franchisees, about I'd say a third of them, do bigger construction style stuff. So they're going to bring in dingo, like stand-on skid steers or track loaders. They're going to do patios and retaining walls and go bigger with project style stuff. So there's just more equipment, bigger projects. $50,000, $100,000 projects are common. So yeah, it's different types of projects, and then obviously snow and ice. That's a whole different ball game. So there's such a wide variety of things you can do in this industry. And in my opinion, what we so often get into when we're trying to scale, the 2 worst ways to grow your business, in my opinion, in this industry is adding more services and adding geographical expansion. Like, we'll just keep servicing further and further and further away from yeah, you can grow your business doing that. It's just least profitable. And so same with services. Like, I would rather have my lawn care business have $500,000 in annual revenue, and I just do mowing and pulling weeds. I'd rather have that compared to $1 million business, but I have $100,000 coming from mowing and $100,000 from fertilizer and $100,000 from bush trimming and $100,000 from paver patios and $100,000 from artificial turf and that's 10 different businesses. In my mind, the problem with this industry is it's the green industry. So I have a lawn care business. Like, no, you're doing 10 different businesses. Like, trimming trees is different than mowing grass. It's different than fertilization, weed control. It's different than snow plowing. Like, it's totally different. And so I think people need to simplify their services and really what are the core competencies that we're going to really scale up. Because if you're going to try to scale and you're going to try to grow really big, and if someone's out there listening and like, hey, I have 100,000 or 200,000, I want to become $1 million. You got to have systems, right? But it's so much easier to create a system around simple services and simplicity and things that have a regimen to it instead of, oh yeah, I'm going to add this service and this service and I'm doing this. And you're just like, you'll run yourself ragged. You'll be completely crippled mentally. And secondarily, you'll be unprofitable because you have literally 10 different businesses just operating under one entity name, so happens, but you call it a lawn care business. It's not. It's 10 different businesses.
It's a great point, and I'm thinking of some situations where I can definitely think of some franchisees who get asked by a customer, can you do this or can you do this?
Of
course I can do it. And they look it up on YouTube and then
and that works when you're solo, right?
Yeah.
That works when you're by yourself because, hey, I can look it up on YouTube, I can get it done. But when you start throwing employees into the mix of it, if you don't have a system in place for that work to be done efficiently, profitably, and on time, you're just going to run, it's going to be just an absolute gong show. And I see it all the time, there is so much opportunity in this industry. People literally get blinded by it. And that is the thing that drags our business down, is just adding more services and keep growing expansion. Like, oh yeah, we can go, this is a great neighborhood. Yeah, it's 25 minutes away. Okay, what about the one that's 35 minutes away and 45? And all of a sudden now they're driving an hour before they even their blades start turning. Right? And you don't make money in this industry until the blades start turning and you're on the job site. So being route density and having a tight route is very important. And then not adding every service under the sun. Like choose your core competencies and stick to it. And I made the mistake my first few years. Yeah, we grew really fast to 1.5 in a few years. But the thing is, look, we had an artificial turf, we had tree chippers, we had massive dump trucks like the one I got hurt under. Like all these complexities that over the last 4 or 5 years have been stripped away to where all we do is mowing and property cleanups. And that's it. We don't do all these other things. I have to sell snow plows and skid steers and track loads and excavators and dump trucks and tree chippers and all this artificial turf that we had sitting there that now my manager left that knows artificial turf. So what do I have to do? Sell it all for pennies on the dollar. Like, just stick to what you know and scale that. And I think if we all just took 1 or 2 services and really focused on them, we'd become better at them, we'd become more efficient at them, we'd be better at training our employees on them, and we make more money and more profit because we're so good at those services.
That's really, really great advice. And let's say just some tips. You've just mentioned a lot there, pretty much those things, but what's something, let's say a sole trader or a mowing franchisee or a lawn care garden owner, let's say in Australia or America, can do tomorrow to make their business more profitable in your opinion? You've mentioned a lot of good stuff there. Is there something else that they could do?
Do they have employees or not?
No, we'll go with the sole trader.
Okay. So if they're by themselves, I think the number one thing that you can do to be more profitable is start looking at where's all the waste in your day, right? I'd say something similar with P4P if you had employees, but even if you don't have P4P, obviously you don't, you're a sole proprietor, you're doing this by yourself. You got to look for every single second of the day that the blades are not turning and you're not getting work done. That's the first part of waste. There's obviously parts of efficient, like how to actually do the work more efficiently. That's equipment, better equipment, etc. But the first place, like don't spend a single dollar and be more profitable in your business, is every single step that your setup, if it's not inefficient, like if your weed whackers are on the right side of the truck, if your line is not next to the trimmer, if your gas fuel tank is not on the same spot, like all of those little things added up over the course of 20 jobs in a day add up really quick. And so, do you put the line, a cut piece of line, in your pocket? So if you're 100 yards away from your truck and you run out of line, do you have to walk all the way back to your truck? No, it should be in your pocket. So all those little things, when the blades are not turning and you are not actually getting work done, that's all waste, including drive time, which means how can I get my 20 customers in a kilometer radius versus 10 kilometers or 15 kilometers, right? Less and less drive time. So the number one thing I would be looking at in terms of metric, because I like numbers a lot. So the number thing I would be looking at is what is your budgeted hours for the day. That budgeted hours is simply the amount of time you're allocating to actual work getting done. So if I have an $80 job and I charge $160 per hour, that would mean that I have 0.5 or half a budget hour on that job, okay? What's my budget hours divided by my clocked hours for a day? That ratio is usually, for an inefficient operator, 50, 60% or less. For a really efficient and very profitable operator, that could be 90% or above, which means that most of their day is actually spent on the job getting the work done. They're beating their budget hours, they're very efficient, and so that one metric alone is something I'd be tracking every single day.
Okay, now what if someone's got employees? Maybe most of our franchisees would have, I'd say, maybe 1 or 2 employees. Some have maybe 6 or 5 or 7. Mm-hmm. Most of them, if they have an employee, might be 1 guy, might be 2. How could they do it with employees?
In terms of being more profitable?
Yeah, let's say being more profitable. Yeah.
So being more profitable, the number one expense in every service-based business is labor. And what's horrible about it is it is a variable expense, right? Which means the more work I do, if it's a variable expense, typically it correlates with that. It's not like a fixed expense. A fixed expense is rent, insurance, a car payment. Like I have a gym, I own a gym, right? And the gym is a very different model because I have a very high rent and then I have very low staffing costs. So very high fixed expense, low variable costs. So all that means is I just gotta sell enough to get above my fixed expense. It's different with lawn care landscaping because all of our cost is variable, which is labor. So the number one thing you want to do is, how do I turn this variable expense into something that is fixed? And how you do that is P for P. Because with P for P, I can fix the percent of money that I'm giving to my employee and turn a variable expense into a fixed expense, so I know exactly how much I'm spending. And some days they're going to crush it and make a bunch of money, but other days when it's rainy, I'm not losing anything out. It's just up to them to be as efficient as possible. And there's going to be good days and bad days, but they'll make more money. And more importantly, I would rather spend 33% of my total revenue on employees and wages than spend and be on P for P where I know it's 33%, compared to spending 30% but be on an hourly basis. The reason for that is because the inconsistency. You do really, really good job, a job that goes really, really well, or the weather is perfect, and you're making like really, really good money, right? And so therefore, you're maybe, if you're on hourly, you're only paying someone 15, 20% of your revenue going to them. But then the next day, bad weather, lots of callbacks, now 60% of your, 80% of your revenue is going to wages. That up and down is what creates very unpredictable cash flows. So I'd rather take that variable expense, turn it into a fixed expense by using P for P, pay for performance.
Oh, fantastic.
Sorry, that was like really deep.
No,
I apologize.
that's great. But I was going to say also, you have a video which got around 1 million views, which is dealing with the customer complaints. Awesome. And I recommend franchisees look at it. But in gyms, probably the hottest topic is always the complaint system, right?
Yeah.
So maybe do you want to talk about how the complaint system works for your business and what's some advice around dealing with customer complaints or concerns?
Yeah, we have a similar model in terms of the surveys that go out, and basically how we do it is an email goes out to a customer after service, and it says, are you happy or not? If they say they are happy, it's going to take them directly to leaving an online public review. If they say they are not happy, they go to a different form, which is going to go internal to us, so we know what's going on. And so dealing with customer complaints is difficult. It goes to another level when you start having employees, right? Because now it's he said versus she said. Well, I did a walkthrough with the customer, but the customer's complaining about something now. I don't consider that a complaint. So if someone does a walkthrough with the customer and the customer's like, that was great, good to go, I love the job, looks fantastic, and then the next day calls back with a complaint, I don't look at that as a complaint, because the employee did everything in their power to make sure that the customer was happy and the customer signed off on it. So the question then becomes, what did you do in the walkthrough? Right? Did you just say, hey, we're done, and they said, looks great, or did you actually walk them through the walkthrough? So number one way for the IC to reduce callbacks or reduce yellow slips or complaints is to make sure you do walkthroughs with a customer after an initial mow, like the very first mowing service, and then also for any sort of project-based work, weeding, bush trimming, whatever it might be. Make sure they actually see it. Make sure they actually like, are you happy with this level of the bush? And then watch their body language, like, yeah, that's fine. No. Do you want it lower? Because if you don't push for that and actually get the complaint out, guess what? They're going to be a keyboard warrior the next day talking to the office, and that's still going to be a complaint, right? So really trying to get those complaints out on the job site is something we have to train the employees, because that's the number one way to eliminate those complaints.
That's great insight. Now I was going to talk about, you obviously mentioned, we've talked about at the start, but digital media for you is huge. Now, do you allow franchisees to use social media, or how do you encourage them to do something similar to you, or how do you maybe create videos of how-tos, all that sort of stuff? So how does that work in your business?
Yeah, so they all have their own phone number. It's a little different with gyms where you have one national number, right? So they all have their own phone number, so they're allowed to do all the social media. We really encourage it. We're actually really going to stick right now, like short form video. We're having competitions around who can make the most of them and who can get the most views on all these short form platforms, because ultimately it's just a numbers game. If you have 100 franchisees that can do a post a day, there's probably a good chance one or two of them is going to get 1 million views or more on TikTok or YouTube Shorts. So we're really pushing that a lot. We push a lot on terms of Facebook ads, Google ads, YouTube ads, and we give them like the tutorials, and then it's up to them to determine what their budget is, and then just copy the tutorial basically. So
how do you educate you guys on creating video? Because it's something in training, you've been for the training, it's something we've got two really big franchisees in a different division in pool care who have got, one's got 90,000 followers and one's got 200,000 thousand followers.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get that for the mowing and garden care guys, right?
Yeah.
So how do you educate your guys on actually making the video? When you say short form content, we both know what that is. But let's say to a layman or just to someone who might not like social media or whatever, how would you explain it to them?
Yeah, short form content, less than 60 seconds, typically shot in vertical form on their phone. It's really easy to make. And what's really cool about any trade is there's now this niche of social media, which is like oddly satisfying content. And a lot of what we do is like laborious, but it's also oddly satisfying to watch or listen now too. And so how we kind of train it, we don't train how to do a video necessarily. We talk more about the business side of like setting up their Facebook page, how to run ads, and more of that. Because what's discouraging for people is then they create 5 videos and all of them get like 2 views, 8 views, 6 views. And it's like, forget this. I have a business to run, right? And I understand that perception. And so the concept of it is, though, what we try to do is like, okay, let's take the ones that are working, figure out what's working, and then tell everyone about it. So like, for example, the other day, guy posted his first short. I'm very happy for him. He got like 15,000 views, right? And all it was, I told him like, literally just take your phone out and record someone mowing and put the time it took to do the lawn and the time or the cost to the customer. And just do it for like 10 seconds. And that's all he did. A push mower, go, no audio, besides, and this cost and time, and 15,000 views. That's like, oh, that worked. Okay, great. What now if I put the camera on the mower and did the same thing? Oh, like people engaged with it more. Oh, what if now I actually did a voiceover with that? Like, you just get creative. But what's difficult is when you don't get views. And you can literally get a donut. Nothing. And so it's just consistently seeing what's working, what's not, and then just improvising on that.
Well, the way I look at it is with content now, because it's so competitive in these spaces, right, with the Reels and TikTok and stuff like that. It's like going to the gym, right? You've got to, it's 6 months, 6 months you're going to see results. You're not going to see a result after 1 week or 2 weeks. You've just got to be consistent. And watching our pool care guys' accounts, one of them's got like 200-something thousand followers now, and I've gone back to the start of his videos, and it's the same thing, not getting the same amount of views. And he had that one video which went viral pretty much, got like 1 million views, and now he's hooked, right? That sort of that dopamine rush, and he's hooked into it. I want to do more and more and more, and he's just got a massive account now. And I'm really trying to encourage in our training here. I just want one mowing franchisee to get to that same level. We've got one guy, Sammy Side, I'll give him a shout out, who's doing a lot of Reels and stuff, and he's grown his Instagram account via Reels. But we've got 2,000 plus mowing franchisees. We just need 10% or even 5% doing that at the same thing.
The biggest challenge I see for an independent operator to see the value is that the reach of a post is for, like, let's say the whole country or the whole world, let's be honest. And so what is that really going to move the needle for their business? Honestly, not a lot. Okay, because if we're talking about, like, for us, we get 5 mile or 3 mile radiuses in terms of territories. You all don't even have territories. It's like maybe a mile or two, like 3 or 4 kilometers, right, that you're kind of focused on. The chances of someone seeing that out of the entire world, even if there's 1 million views, and then also needing lawn service, and then also calling you, is like tough numbers to kind of make sense of. And so unless you have a viral hit, there's probably no one in your market can ever see it. Even if you have 15,000 views, probably no one in his market even saw it. And so it's just a matter of, really being clear that this is not necessarily about just your local business, but if we all do it, the brand awareness rises. And that's like unlimited. You'll take the same $2 you spend on marketing and it'll be worth $5 worth of marketing if people have brand awareness. And they've already seen a bunch of, in our case, yellow shirts and yellow trucks, in your case, Jim's face all over the place on social media. It's a really easy buy when all of a sudden they do need lawn care. Guess who they're going to think of? Right? But that takes a long time, and it's not like a very definitive, like a Facebook ad. I can track how many clicks, can track how many people fill out a form, and it's very, very linear, right? It's not that way with social media and content.
You're spot on with what you say. That's why when I do my session in training, I say, who's watched a video of us? Because we're more in the B2B space in terms of we want to sell franchise, right? So we do a lot of franchising video, and that's why I say, who's watched a video before coming training? And all of them will put their hand up, because if you're going to invest 30 to 40 grand with us, you're going to want to know who you're investing in. But yeah, it's fantastic. It's great. Spot on what you say about the brand awareness and about increasing that value off that marketing spend, right? So if you're spending $2 and you get value of $5 because people know the brand, or I recognise them in some way, I've seen them on social somewhere, I'm going to be more inclined to use you over another provider, and that's the way you've got to look at it.
Exactly.
Yeah, cool. Now, in regards to yourself, you're so young. Like, you put 26. It's a great story, and I really do appreciate your time in doing this. You provide so much value. But what motivates you? Because from what I can tell as a thing, like, you're obviously highly intelligent. You could have done anything. Like, someone's going to be a heart surgeon, and the world's your oyster, and you've chosen the lawn care profession, which I'm sure a lot of guys are going, that's fantastic. It's a really good profession, and you're sort of almost 14 years ahead of or 10, 12 years ahead of what Jim did, I guess, in a way. It wasn't until he was his early 30s. But what is actually motivating you at 26? You've achieved so much already. You've obviously got a lot of financial success. You've already got a lot of business success. So what motivates you? And then the second part to that is what's your plan for the next, let's say, 10 to 5 years for your business?
Yeah, so what motivates me, honestly, is, like, I love business, right? people comment about working too much or having work-life balance or whatever. For me, it's like, if you could do anything you wanted all the time, like, would that be considered work? Not really. Like, if I'm on vacation, all I want to do is open up my laptop and start working and like getting more stuff done. Like, I was the kid that, like, when I played computer games, it was like Roller Coaster Tycoon and Mall Tycoon and like Monopoly and Life. Like, I love building things. And so I think it's like, I don't think it's an unhealthy thing to realize that what you love is building things, and it so happens I'm building businesses, and I love it. I love it. I love every single minute of it, and there's there's no like, I need to accomplish this in life. I enjoy every single day. I love what I do, and I love building businesses. And I love the stress, I love the highs and the lows. In retrospect, in the lows, you never enjoy it. It's horrible. It's like horrible. But in all of it, in its entirety, there's nothing I'd rather be doing. And if I was on vacation on a beach, I would literally be numb in my brain within half a day. Right? Like, there's nothing inside me like, I want to travel the world. I want to go on a beach. Like, there's nothing inside me that thinks that's like great or fun. In terms of 5 to 10 years, the franchise is my number one thought process right now. Everything else is ancillary. 20 years, we want to take it public. And so I would like to have it where, kind of like Amazon, everyone thinks of Amazon as like delivering packages, but really there's like 20 or 30 different things inside Amazon, like AWS, robotics. They do a ton of different stuff. They have their own airlines. Like, there's a whole bunch. And so all these different things that I'm building will become one part of that same company. And everyone will know us for yellow trucks and yellow, mowing lawns of franchises, but there'll be a whole bunch of media arm, software, robotics that we're working on, and that will become something that we want to, in 20 years, not 5 to 10. 5 to 10 years, simply Augusta, and building that out, and then taking that money and being able to start working the software, the robotics, the things that I think in 20 years will be a big part of this industry.
Yeah, that was a question I was going to ask earlier, but where do you see AI, or where do you see, let's say, technology disruption coming into the business? Because there's a really well-known financial columnist in Australia, and he sort of it's called the Barefoot Investor, and he sort of had a dig at Jim's the other day saying, oh yeah, I've got I don't need Jim's mowing anymore, I've got my little Landroid robotic mower, doing its thing, right? Yeah. So where do you see the technology disruption coming into the industry in the next 10 to 15 years?
I'm thrilled about robotic mowers. The reason is because if you look at an actual mowing service, you're not just mowing the lawn. You're mowing, you're edging, you're blowing off the leaves, you're pulling weeds, you're trimming bushes, whatever it might be. Only one thing that robot can do, and that is mow the grass. And that happens to be the thing that I gotta buy the most expensive piece of equipment for. And I'm charging the same per hour, right? So I'm charging $100 per hour. I'm charging that whether I'm edging, weed whacking, blowing things off, or mowing. So if I can get rid of the mowing, which requires a $5,000 piece of equipment, and just use my fingers to pull a weed and get paid the same amount per hour, why would I not want that? So I'm very thrilled that, especially because the biggest inhibitor of growth for anyone that wants to have employees is finding labor. Why would I not want to take the most like routinized work, which is mowing, and get that taken off my plate? So I'm thrilled about robotic mowers. It's really needed in this industry, in my opinion. And so it'll allow the bigger, more licensed and like those guys to actually compete with the guys who are cheap, because they'll be the ones who can afford it, but it'll bring down their cost of labor to where they can compete with the chuck and a truck. I think that's really exciting.
A chuck and a truck, so we'll go back to that. Is that what you call it?
We call it chuck and a truck. What do you guys call it?
I think there'll be different terms. Sometimes, like we say, the backyard barrier or something like that. Something similar to that, yeah.
There's like Vince in a van. There's Chuck and a truck. I actually have a GM. His name is Chuck. So whenever he makes a video, he's out of his truck.
He's on right. We call him the Cowboys, the local cowboy, the independent cowboy. So.
Oh man, yeah. So like I'm thrilled about technology in terms of robotics. I really do believe that's 20 years down the road. I think everyone's jumping the gun on it. It needs to come down way down in price. And I personally believe that's going to happen when someone like Amazon comes along. So for example, Amazon just bought Roomba. Roomba's the little thing that goes around does vacuum, right? And the reason they did that was not because of a great business model. They did it because now they know the square footage of your property, or of your house. They know everything in terms of layout of your house, and they can sell to you way better. So what makes sense to me is why would Amazon not try to do the same thing as a Roomba for the inside as a Roomba on the outside? But now this outdoor, piece of equipment can have motion sensors. It can be a security device. Oh, by the way, they bought Ring out a couple years too. Like, it can become a security device. Oh, and what's a big problem Amazon has? Package theft. So why not put the package inside of the mower, and it's locked, And if anyone pulls it away, it's now trackable. So I think that's the kind of thing that's going to come around, or Home Depot or Lowe's. They come and say, hey, look, we're willing to lose billions of dollars. Home Depot and Lowe's is big in the U.S. They're a publicly traded company. Maybe something else in Australia.
Bunnings would be the equivalent.
Bunnings.
Yeah.
They come in and they're just like, hey, we're willing to lose billions of dollars, but we want one of these on every single person's lawn. So they just see our brand everywhere, and we're willing to lose a couple $100 so that when they do their $5,000 home renovation or $20,000 deck repair, they think of us and they come to us. And we're willing to make that loss up front. That's when robotics will take off, in my opinion. Someone just coming in as a loss leader and just crushing the market. So I think that's really interesting. But in the next 5 to 10 years, it's going to be who can optimize labor the most. That's why I'm building P4Psoftware.com. It is the most important thing, who can optimize labor, because it's faster to optimize labor. Because if I just tell you, like, hey, I'm going to give you $10 to wipe off the whiteboard, right? I'm going to give you $10 to wipe off the whiteboard. You could probably do it in 30 seconds. Now, if I just tell you, hey, I'm going to give you $10 in the next hour, and I want you to do the whiteboard, do the other things, you'd probably just take your time, whatever. You know you're getting $10 for the next hour no matter what. But if I told you $10 and you just got to do this one task, you do it way more efficiently. And I could have that change of behavior very quickly compared to robotics, which is going to take 20 years. So I think the best change in terms of efficiency for this industry is how do we take labor and make it more efficient? And that's going to be first and foremost, not robotics or a robot trimming a bush or whatever it is, or Boston Dynamics coming along, or Tesla robot coming around. I'm not concerned about those things. That's going to be 5, 10, 15, 20 years in reality. What's going to be the most impactful in your business in the next 5 to 10 years is using software to make your business more efficient. And the number one way that there's the number one place of waste in a business to be more efficient in is labor. And so that's where P4P software, we're such a big proponent of that.
I want to talk about real quickly now before we end this is, where do you get your ideas from? So is there any books you go to, is there any YouTube channels, or there's any thought leaders? In regards to your content model, you've obviously, I follow Gary Vee and all those sort of people a lot, and you've taken some stuff from that and obviously implement yourself, and that's what we do with gyms as well. So what books or what resources, or who are your mentors, or who do you look for, and where do you get your ideas from?
Yeah, to this day, it's partly why I'm here. I don't have mentors. I didn't grow up with people even owning businesses or owning real estate. I do real estate and stocks and stuff like that. No one I knew did that. Not a single person. And to this day, I don't meet with someone who's way ahead of me on a consistent basis or anything like that. So coming here, I would have done it just for the hour with Jim yesterday, just because I know he's somewhere, he's way ahead of me, somewhere I want to get to. That's worth me coming across the earth for a week for, right? And so, I don't really have mentors in person, but what's so beautiful about the digital age is I can also learn from the greatest minds of all time via audiobooks, podcasts, etc. So I'm just constantly learning. There's not a minute that goes by that I'm not listening to something. And whether it be a sermon, whether that be a podcast, an audiobook. So, everyone should have Audible, right? Is that a big thing over here?
Yeah, I have Audible. Jim also has Audible.
So we have 400 books for our team to listen to. I'll buy books about entrepreneurship, leadership. They have a whole bunch in there. So I truly believe just being a sponge for that is important. The minute you stop learning, it's the day you start dying. So I think it's important to just constantly be doing that. And if you're not trying to become better and improve yourself, why do you expect everyone else to become better? Why do you expect your employees to be more efficient and improve their job? Why do you expect the franchisor, like Jim's Mowing, they should be doing this better? I think, well, are you trying to improve yourself? Are you trying to listen to books and challenge your thoughts and beliefs? If you're not, then, we should all just, I always say, you just put a nail in the coffin. You're 1 foot in the grave if you stop learning. So every single day, trying to learn something.
What are your top 3 books and audio books? What are your go-tos on Audible? I know there's a lot.
3?
But what are some of your recommendations?
Okay, I'll try to go more recent because there's so many, but let me just go recent. So I really like Sam Walton's book, Made in America. It talks about his thought process of building Walmart. And it's mind-blowing, right? So really love that book. $100 million offer by Alex Hormozy, new and upcoming content creator in the U.S. That is just really, really smart, I think. Oh man, third one. Ready, Aim, Fire. Ready, Aim, Fire? Yeah, Aim. I forget. It's Ready, Aim. If you put Ready, Aim, Fire, it'll come up. It talks about the different stages of 0 to 1 million, 1 million to 10 million, 10 million to 100 million, and 100 million plus businesses, and all the stages of growth in there. It's tough to find a book that goes that far out. There's a lot of businesses that do 0 to 100,000, 0 to 1 million, but for someone to zoom out and actually start analyzing businesses from that high of a view is helpful for me because I'm trying to get to that 100 million level now, right? So it's really a good book for me. But There's so many better books, like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, 10X, like all those very foundational books I think are kind of a given, but those are some of the recent ones I've listened to.
No worries. Well, we'll end it there because I could keep talking to you for a long, long time, but you've already got a lot of content with franchisees. So for those who don't know, might be watching you for the first time, where can they go to find out more about you?
Yeah, YouTube's probably the best place. Mike Andes, just search it there. There's Facebook and all the other platforms, but YouTube's the best, I think. I post there now daily. We switched the content to more of a vlog style, so you actually just get to see like what I'm doing every single day, which there's bits and pieces of learning throughout it instead of just educational, like, studio. We did thousands of those, and now it's like, hey, instead of just doing training and teaching, let's like just show what I'm going throughout the day, and people will learn through osmosis.
Absolutely. So before we let you go, I've got some more stuff for you, but we've got to give you some Jim's mowing.
Let's go.
Jim's mowing there. So we've got a hat there for you.
Yes, it's official. Let's go. I'm getting drafted.
You're getting drafted. We'll make you the #1 pick. So we've got a shirt for you as well. I'm going to get you a few more shirts as well, but we've got one there for you as well. So we've got one there.
Thank you, man. I appreciate
Jim's
it.
mowing. And probably the most iconic thing, which is this one here.
You got a small enough size for me?
That is a small. So if it fits Jim, will fit you. You'll be right. You got more. You got a lot more muscle than Jim. And then we'll give you the hat as well.
Awesome.
We don't have the fake beard yet, but we'll give you the hat.
This will make me a true Aussie. Let's go.
Yeah. But first of all, Mike, thank you very much for your time today and for all the value you've provided. It's been an absolute privilege to have you here. And this all started, just shows you the power of social media. Like I reached out to you because I saw you in this space. You just popped up in my feeds from somewhere. I looked at you and I'm like, wow, this guy's impressive. And you do a podcast. Well, why don't you have Jim on your podcast? And then all of a sudden, a year later, you're here.
Yeah.
So it just shows franchisees or people just how powerful digital it is. And from an opportunity from us to learn from you, it's just been amazing. We've got you talking at our business building conference tomorrow, which is the first thing we're trying. But just real quickly, the Landscape Summit. Now, is that something that's going to be only in person or online, or could franchisees watch that online? Or
so if someone's a member of landscapebusinesscourse.com, they can watch the virtual event. But otherwise, it's in person. Like we just kind of got away. Like after COVID, we're like, forget this virtual stuff. We want people in person. But if they're a member of landscapebusinesscourse.com, then they get the recording of that there. But they're also welcome to come over to the U.S. Like we don't bite or anything. So when it's really, really hot here in the middle of your summer, you can come over and experience some cold weather. But yeah, it's in January, Landscape Summit. It's 3 days. We have a whole bunch of cool speakers, and then I'm there a lot, so it's a lot of fun. Yeah, well, I apologise for the weather on behalf of all Melburnians. Melburnians notorious for being one of the worst, has the worst weather in Australia, so apologise for that. But yeah, hopefully if there's any franchisees watching, January is a good time. Most Australians do holidays or vacation around that time, so maybe go over there. And as you said to me, the Australian accent, they like the Aussies over there, so it might be a good thing for you to go over, especially if you're a single bloke. But thank you very much for your time today, Mike. Really do appreciate it. I hope you enjoy the rest of our training, and looking forward to hearing you speak tomorrow at our conference as well. Awesome. Thanks,
Mike.
I appreciate it.
Ta.